The head of the European diplomacy would like to come up with a proposal for an immediate collection. We are talking about a sum of 20 to 40 billion euros, and this collection should be made so that each state would contribute with some share of its own state budget. If we looked at Slovakia, it would be, let's say, 160 to 260 euros million at AS. Oh, I want to make it very clear to you that we will not vote for that. Of course, simply put, anyone who wants to help bilaterally, we will not defend it. It is a matter of the country. But when we are suffering, it is a matter of consolidation. I can't imagine that we have put $250 million in Ukraine for military exports and Slovakia will steal half of it, that I don't think there is any reason for that. If Ukraine has such a huge amount of aid, it cannot be a one-way road. Ukraine also has to have some duties in the direction of China. That's all. We only ask that we start talking about the renewal of gas transit, because in the other case, Europe is not competitive. I looked at the latest prices. It is about 45 euros for a megawatt hour of gas, which is 6 or 7 times more than in the United States. In the United States, the price is well below 10 euros. So tell me, how can we be competitive when we pay 45 for a megawatt hour and the United States pays 7 or 8 euros for a megawatt hour? We have no reason. If it comes to the fact that in the end there will be a change in the renewal of gas transit also for the price that we don't understand some things, for example, that there can't be an example. Well, if it can't be, it can't be. If the European Union thinks so. So for these measures, Mr. Chairman, I think we can go to support the conclusions as such within the European Council. The whole problem is, ladies and gentlemen, that the gas that flows through Slovakia to Ukraine is 95% Russian gas. So Ukraine buys Russian gas from various foreign traders, pays for it, and does what it has calculated for us. When we insisted that we wanted to draw gas through Ukraine, I was labeled in the style of Robert. You are joking. You want to buy Russian gas, pay for it, and pay for Russian military exports. And today, Ukraine does the same. Ukraine buys Russian gas. We push it towards Ukraine. But when we want to continue the gas transit through Ukraine towards the west, it simply doesn't work. Let me ask you, do it practically. If there is no change in any way in the renewal of gas transit or the need to renew gas transit, I will block the conclusion. I will be among those who will block the conclusion. I will say it very clearly and without any hesitation. Maybe here we can also assume that there will be some preemptive moves, some kind of inventions, such as the production of pink electric tanks, and this will be a consequence of the European security policy. Therefore, when it comes to those 800 billion, Mr. Vice President, unfortunately we will not avoid it will kill the pressure of huge countries. The arms lobby is so huge now everyone is shaking their hands because they know that the arms industry, just like the pharmaceutical companies, are going to make huge profits. You know what could be done in Europe for those 800 billion? What if Mr. Vice President allows us flexibility? If he allows us that exports that go above 2% will not cause destruction of various rules within the pact or Rostow instability. If we will be able to build hospitals, roads, we will be able to build bridges. Then we can say very simply that if the budget of the Ministry of Defense is calculated at 300-400 million euros, it will be used to build a hospital situated to then losing it. Why not? This is what we are ready to do. The topic of the better law cancellation is being discussed repeatedly in Slovakia, and this is exactly what Mr. President Kimchina is saying. Are we able to agree on this, or I hear from the outside world that you can imagine the better law cancellation? We have a fundamentally different opinion that we cannot imagine the better law cancellation for the Czech states within the European Union. Then they will not need us for anything. Then big countries will decide, and we will only listen to what they tell us. That is why we say, let's talk about foreign policy of the Slovak Republic in the light of new events. Shows that foreign policy of the world is not static, that we cannot answer for everything. We want to be good. Members of the EU and NATO's partners are neutral. That is your answer. Don't say anything else. When the United States leaves NATO, it is after NATO. And when the EU decides to go in a double line, it is after the EU. But we still insist that our foreign policy is clearly based on membership in the current NATO and in the current EU, and this can fall apart in a minute. See, I'm glad that in 1988 the Warsaw Pact fell apart, which is nonsense. And in 3 days, it was after the Warsaw Pact after 1989. I don't think that these are forever agreements. NATO can end in a few months and very quickly. Let's be active when it comes to a new form of security. International structures. The government I lead, for example, supports the expansion of the Security Council, and I can also imagine that the Security Council would have even more important powers if we talk about the participation of troops in the territory of Ukraine. It is not yet clear what the role of these troops should be. Should they help Ukraine in the war, or should they be a guarantee if a peace agreement is reached to maintain the conditions of peace? It is extremely sensitive and dangerous here. Someone is playing with the Third World War, and I think that American President Trump is right to say that this is a regional conflict. Don't bother with it, because it is a regional conflict to a certain extent, thanks to our European stupidity. We are creating a conflict that can explode like the Third World War. If you don't know what's going on with us, then come up with a new story. The new story is whether we will go to Paris to meet the general staff. And you know what this meeting is about? About the nuclear warhead. I don't want Slovakia to participate in the nuclear warhead of France. If you allow me, this is my answer that I have a right to do so. If you're the Prime Minister, you can go to the general staff and accuse the French president who wants to make a nuclear war.